someone like Lawrence Bishnoi, who's in a maximum security prison in India, has been able to orchestrate such criminal activity in North America. That's going to be a hard one for the Indian government to wash away.
Transnational criminal gangs, Lawrence Bishnoi, India's involvement. These are the headlines that India is making right now, world over, and the world is questioning India's democratic credentials. To discuss this and more, I am joined by Professor Robert Huish, who is a professor at Dalhousie University in Canada. He has commented extensively on Lawrence Bishnoi's gang, and he also follows India's transnational criminal network. Thank you so much for joining in, Professor. If you could start by having your assessment of the Operation Hardball and the subsequent charges introduced by the Department of Justice.
So yeah, Operation Hardball, which was released on July 8th, 2026, that's a sweeping case of sweeping indictments that the U.S. prosecutors from the Justice Department and the FBI, in cooperation with Canada's RCMP, are leveling against Lawrence Bishnoi. And the big charge on top of this is to say that U.S. federal prosecutors are certain that they've ordered the murder of a man on Canadian soil using a series of orders through cell phones that were based in the U.S. And as a result, they're going to be pushing ahead with charges directly against Bishnoi. So Operation Hardball, that's been a 2-year investigation altogether that's involved FBI, RCMP, several other police agencies. And so far, there's been 37 people have been charged across 3 indictments. And the crimes do range from murder for hire to kidnapping to extortion to the trafficking of drugs such as cocaine, methamphetamine, and even firearms. But again, the big one is trying to connect Lawrence Bishnoi, who again is in jail in India, to orchestrating executions.
Before we get into the merits of the charges and Department of Justice's filing, I want to get your sense as to the magnitude of this case and what does it mean for the reputation of India. This does come with a lot of reputational issues for India. For example, having a transnational criminal gang operating from India, and as you mentioned, from inside a jail, he's under the control of authorities, and still he's ordering assassinations across the world.
Yes, there's 2 issues that India is going to have to work through here. And the first is to answer the question about how someone like Lawrence Bishnoi, who's in a maximum security prison in India, has been able to orchestrate such criminal activity in North America. So, most maximum security institutions in the world, you would not expect that somebody would have the sort of communication access or the financial power or the clout over other people to carry out such crimes. So there's going to have to be answers brought forward to say, how in the world could Bishnoi have organized this from prison? So that's the first part. The second part, which we're not hearing as forwardly with Operation Hardball, but we have heard it in the past, is trying to connect the Bishnoi gang to the Modi government. And previous Canadian officials, as early as January 2026, there were RCMP officials, and then before that in 2023, we've heard even from the former Trudeau government comments about trying to associate the Bishnoi gang doing extrajudicial killings on behalf of the Indian government. And now no one right now is making that formal claim. Prime Minister Mark Carney in Canada is not saying that. The Canadian political officials are not trying to associate that claim together. But that's going to be a hard one for the Indian government to wash away, because there is such a tension that the Indian government's put on Sikh separatism and Khalistan over the past 3 years, that it comes back to the question about how could Bishnoi have succeeded in these operations if he was in one of India's maximum security prisons.
But do you find this intriguing?
Oh, very much so. And I believe it's going to go further than the initial criminal charges that have been put forward. There's also evidence of Bishnoi gangs operating in Europe, Middle East, South and Southeast Asia as well. So there's clearly a pattern here where other jurisdictions, including Germany, Italy, Portugal, and Europe, uh, have, and again, Dubai, Pakistan, Philippines, and Thailand, and in Asia, have made connections to the Bishnoi gang. And what it's going to do here is likely expose how these foot soldiers for the gang working abroad, how they're recruited, and what sort of incentive is given to them for this. And right now, the RCMP, with their original charges, we're making connections to the consular office of India in Canada, and initially, those became very politicized, and it wound up damaging bilateral relations with Canada and India for quite a few months. Now, I think the focus by both the RCMP and the FBI is to look at the criminality of it. But behind the scenes, government officials in India, the US, Canada, some European countries are going to have to ask themselves, how did people with criminal connections make their way into the country? And especially in Canada, where the Bishnoi gang is considered to be a terrorist organization. So if you have direct dealings with them, you will be charged and or deported if that's also the case. So there's going to be some homework that other governments are going to have to do to get through this.
Professor, I have three names in front of me which have been mentioned repeatedly in this case. We heard the name of Nikhil Gupta, who was involved, who had a central role in this, especially when it came to the New York incident. And then we also have the name of Vikas Yadav, who is considered a former officer of RAW, India's intelligence. And then, we also saw some reports that RCMP had communication which had mentions of India's Home Minister Amit Shah. And now, when we see the charges, these names are missing from the charges. Can you try to untangle this web or this intrigue that something changed in the last 3 or 4 months? What do you think changed?
Well, I think the big one is that the Canadian government and possibly the US government as well want to see this case dealt with strictly in terms of criminality. So using justice systems to extradite or to lay charges on members, rather than having this to be some sort of a political conflict where uh, high officials and executive members and every government are going to get involved with the dealings. And I think that's the big motivation.
Do you think that this question of Indian states' involvement will be addressed at some point?
It might have to come up, and that might actually be revealed through any persecution processes and through the litigation process within the U.S. court systems. If there is connections that get associated to this that are tangible, that are not able to be dismissed at ministerial level, then you're going to see the international political heat dial back up again. For now, there's enough plausible deniability that's being put into it to not directly point the fingers at anyone in Mr. Modi's administration. But again, when you have such a wide sweeping operation like this come forward, you'd be surprised what can come out in the proceedings, and it could be ones that are unexpectedly connecting to some of the officials who were originally named back in 2023.
We've seen recent examples where states have tried to conduct cross-border assassinations, and they've had diplomatic troubles. I can give you example of Russia or other countries, and they've been marred with sanctions or reputational damage. Do you think that the world is treating India with the same yardstick?
Yeah, it's challenging because with this case, I think that we've seen other countries in the past. I mean, Colombia, there's been cartels that have run out of there, and Mexico as well, where you've had these extrajudicial killings that cartels have ordered. And I think that at one point, by trying to go for full sanctions or cutting out all diplomatic relations with a country, especially one the size of India, is one that may not be able to deliver justice or results that the Canadian government or the US government wants. Instead, I think the approach here is to try to go after that criminal element itself, even though recognizing there may be political associations to those in the Indian government. And if that's the case, then that would have to be dealt with through diplomatic channels. But just by sort of walling the whole place off wouldn't serve the interests of all Indians or all Canadians or all Americans at this time. So I believe that's why we're seeing it be more focused within the courts rather than within the embassies.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Hey, my pleasure.